My name is Kara Gully and I'm going to be your host for tonight. Welcome to Persuasion. Now let's sit and talk a minute. I have a question. What would you do with $40,000 extra dollars just in general? For many people, this is a whole year's worth of pay. Likely you were thinking about the new car you would buy, the extravagant vacation you would finally be able to afford, or maybe even a down payment on a new house. Now, what if I told you that $40,000 is the average cost to adopt a child here in the US? This means it costs $40 grand to take a child out of the foster care system and give them a loving and stable home. This is simply unacceptable. These children are spending their lives without a family to call their own just because most middle-class families would likely not be able to afford the adoption fees alone. The problem here is that the charges and fees for adoption are much too high and little is done to help the adoptive families better cope with the financial burden at hand. So let's take a look at the price of adoption. What fees are included and what exactly you're paying for. Also, let's take a look at domestic versus international adoption and what's involved with each different type. So just like any process, there are a lot of steps and employees that need to be paid for their work during the course of an adoption. There's the people that are doing the house checks, the people that are processing the paperwork, and of course, just the fees to go and get the child in general. So the overall price of adoption includes visas, agency fees, and program application fees, in-country adoption fees, travel expenses, and medical fees. In addition, there are other fees such as attorney fees, home study fees, the charges for a profile book, which is pretty much just a resume of why you would be a good adoptive parent, but it costs anywhere from $1,000 to $1,500. Now, the average price for a domestic adoption is around $34,000. So like I said before, that's the cost of a new car, a down payment on a house. Really, $34,000 could do a lot of things for a lot of people. And for international adoption, specifically a child from South Korea, the average price is $47,000. That is just a crazy amount of money that could be used in other areas of life, not just bringing in a new child into your home. So let's take a deeper look at domestic adoptions. There are 135,000 children adopted within the US each year. So that means each year, people in the US spend $135,000 times $34,000 on adoption alone, and that's just to replace children and give them new, stable families. In addition to that, there are 1.5 million adopted children within the US as of 2019. The average cost, like I mentioned before, is $34,000. This is not to say all adoptions cost this much, because occasionally there are extenuating circumstances that are able to lower the prices, such as grants or things such as GoFundMe pages that are able to lower the price of the adoption for the family. Now let us take a deeper look into the popularity of international adoptions in the US. In the year 2018, there were just over 4,000 adoptions in the US. So basically to simplify, in 2018, 4,000 people went out of the country to take a child and bring them into their own home and pay for that adoption fee. Normally, an international adoption would cost more due to the obligatory travel expenses, so plane rides and just like the actual logistics of getting the child from point A to point B, and also visiting the child beforehand so you can meet them and maybe meet their family. And like I said before, the average adoption of a child from South Korea prices out at about $47,000, which is just a crazy price to be paying just to give a child a new home. So let's go over the cause for these high prices. The first is pretty obvious. There are charges for just like the transaction that need to be made. They are very obvious and like everybody is not surprised by them. So, paying to bring the child from point A to B, like I said, or also just paying for checks on your home to make sure that the new adoptive family is a responsible one that will take care of their child. You don't want to have any sort of abuse of that system. One of these necessities that you need to go through before completing adoption is a home check, and during this process, social workers will do background checks on the parents as well as checking with their families' friends and their extended family to just make sure that the family is a responsible and good home for this new child. Also, a visit will be made to the actual home to make sure that their home is equipped and ready to welcome a new child into it, just to make sure that they're not being adopted into something that is unsustainable. Some other causes of the prices being high are less obvious. For example, there are incredibly high agency fees set up that leaves the agency with incredible profit even after all of the hard work is done. So much so that in 2016, the IRS reported that the adoption industry was worth a whopping $404 million. That's an insane amount of profit being made just to replace children who have no place else to go. And now let us take a look at the effects of these crazy high price tags. The most obvious effect is that children will be left in the foster care system because many good, healthy families simply cannot afford to adopt them. As of 2019, there are approximately 440,000 children in the foster care system, and that is just here in the United States alone. So what are the consequences of that effect? 440,000 children will go to sleep tonight knowing if they are going to go to bed tomorrow in the same bed. They are left wondering what tomorrow brings and if somebody will be there for them the next day. If the cost of adoption were more feasible, it is fair to say that the number of adoptions each year would likely dramatically increase. This is so important because not only is it ethical to support accessibility to the process of adoption, it is also biblical. James 1:27 says, "Religion that God our Father accepts as pure and faultless is this, to look after orphans and widows in their distress." Furthermore, this is important because we are a nation that fights for the voiceless. These children are not always able to advocate for themselves, so it is our responsibility, especially as Christians, to do that for them. So, like I said before, this problem simply cannot be solved overnight. It is a problem that has been building upon itself for many years, and I'm not proposing that all adoptions should be free of charge because that is simply just not practical. Employees that work for social work companies and adoption agencies need to be paid just like everybody else. But I do propose that fees should be lowered, and that as Christians, we should work to support families who are in the middle of the adoption process. I believe that the first step is to pray for families around the world, to first not only stay together so less adoptions are needed and they are able to take care of their children by themselves initially, but also to create space in their hearts and homes for these children. So praying that the people around the world are able to accept these children into their homes and create the time and space and money for them. And the next step is a bit more logistical. Raise awareness. Many people do not know if all the expenses involved in adopting a child. So let people know just how much it costs to give a child a home. And finally, start charities, donate to charities, or volunteer with charities that help fund the adoption process for families who apply to it. So starting charities, you go into your community and see if there's any charity already that is working to support people that want to adopt children. Donate to charities. If you're in the spot where you can financially give to those charities, go ahead and do that because it's going to support not just that charity, but a child's home life and their ability to grow up in a stable, loving family. And volunteer with those charities. So if you're not able to give to them financially, give to them with your time, and I guarantee it'll make a difference. Now, let's take a look at a perfect world. So what happens if we are able to lower the price of what it costs to adopt, or at least give to that cause? And first off, there'll be less children in the foster care system because more people will be able to adopt children. And with less children in the foster care system, less government money is being spent on the system, which in turn kind of helps everybody else out. Also, children are given better opportunities to grow and learn in healthy, happy homes. Benefits are obvious and endless, you guys, but you also never know what each of these children may end up accomplishing. Everybody always says that you never know what your child's going to be, and that's no different for the kids that are in the foster care system. So you adopt that child and you have no idea what they're going to grow up and accomplish, and you can be a part of that and fostering that. And now let's look at the alternate. What happens if we don't support the adoption process? Well, foster care systems will grow even more crowded. More government money will be needed to fund the amount of foster care homes available, so eventually we could see a rise in taxes and things like that, just because if it's government funded, we are the people that support the government, and then those prices will have to go up at some point. And not only that, but much more importantly, the quality of life for these children will likely decrease. If these children are so crowded by, just there's too many children in the system, then they're most likely not going to be getting the care and attention that they truly deserve. Also, innocent children will not likely be granted the opportunity to have a stable home life, because there's just too many children in the foster care system, and not everybody can be adopted all at once, so people are going to be left behind. To summarize, the astronomical prices of adoption decrease the likelihood of adoption for many of these children who are waiting for a family to come and adopt them and bring them into their homes. There's no solution that is perfect, and no way to logistically make adoption free. However, as Christians, it is our responsibility to care for everyone, especially orphans. Once again, it is my proposition that we should not just be praying for these families, but working to raise an awareness about the incredibly high prices and donating our time and money whenever and wherever possible in order to increase the chances of loving families being able to adopt these children. Thank you so much for your time, and I highly encourage you to go out and take a look at adoption agencies near you and figure out how you can be a support to them.